Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Legion Alpha. Let's look at the Balanced Druid. You've been asking for it for a while. I was saving it to level with, but as the Alpha is going to be shut down on the 21st, that opportunity won't come up as the new zones won't exist before then, but we'll certainly do that. It's on the list. I saw the upvotes. Don't worry about it. How is it looking? This, I'm glad to say, is one of the more fleshed out, seemingly in the right place kind of specs so far in the Legion. There have been so many that are like, this is clearly miles away from where it's supposed to be. But the Balanced Druid, not so much. I think they're pretty close to where they're going to be. And the big focus over the remainder of the Legion experience, I would guess, is just trying to perfectly balance astral power. What is astral power? What is that all about? Well, my biggest complaint, and the complaint of many, of course, in WoD, is that the Balanced Druid was turned into a sort of automatic pendulum swinging machine where the player was kind of along for the ride and could only mess the system up, but the system will not stop regardless. You just had to play along with it. And what they've decided to do is put some control back in the player's hands, thank God. Give you choices to make, interactions to think about, all that is going on. Eclipse is no more. Eclipse be gone. It's out of there, right? So what we've got now is astral power. Now, what I'm going to tell you is that I've done quite a bit of leveling. We're 101 and a bit. I've done a dungeon on it. Dungeons is such shit XP in Legion so far, but that's not exactly unexpected, I should say. And currently, there are a few talents that are out of whack. What I was saying earlier was that astral power gain is going to be the big balancing factor. And some talents are giving like way more than they probably should, which is throwing everything out of sync in terms of like coming up with a rotation. So a lot of the decisions and thinking about here will work in a world where they're corrected, right? Because they're obviously, the talents are designed to work in a certain synergy, and at the moment they're not, but we can make decisions and make judgments if they were correct, okay? So bear that in mind as we go into this. So Wrath is gone, and so is Starfire, replaced with Solar Wrath and Lunar Strike. Now, what they've done is kind of switch things around. You now have access to both Moonfire and Sunfire at the same time, which is cool. Always like to see this back. Still work the same, so Moonfire is like a single target, and Sunfire will splash to the targets around it. And then they've reversed that for the nuke. So Wrath is like a straight-up single target spell, where Sunfire is the AoE spell, and Lunar Strike now has some AoE splash damage to it. Yeah? And what you'll see is these spells generate 15 astral power for Lunar Strike, and Solar Wrath generates 9. Okay, so each of these spells, when we nuke them, you'll see is that this fills up. We get some astral power here, and if I Lunar Strike, I should get a nice 15 on top of that. I will point out, this thing decays really quickly as soon as you're out of combat, but I guess that's to try and stop you pre-building without using some sort of cheesing on trash and going in with a full astral power bar. They're trying to do that without you making you take a talent to allow you to do that, is generally the idea there. So you can see how quickly it disappears. Like, woo! Bye-bye, astral power. I liked you. I liked you. Is this system better than WoD? Yes, absolutely. Is it great? Yet to be seen until we actually see the final values of how much you are going to get over the course of a fight. It's very tricky. One reason for this is the artifact weapon. I should point this out first. Okay, so the trait your artifact, the scythe, which looks super cool, by the way. I love this scythe. It's so awesome. I love this thing. I think it looks so cool. The Scythe of Elune. Alchemy Frenzy can periodically trigger without being hit. A lot of people are putting a lot of thought into this. You can see I actually have the proc right now. It's basically clear casting for ferals, right? That's how it plays out in reality. It's sometimes you will be casting dots and stuff, and you'll be able to make a decision based on Alchemy Frenzy. What I've often found is very similar to how clear casting was for ferals is, you know, you've already pressed the button. That it's like, oh, that was instacast. Fuck. I kind of missed that opportunity to happen there. So if you think of it less like Alchemy Frenzy when you get attacked, and more like clear casting for ferals. I know it's surprising how many Balanced Druids have never played feral, but it's almost an exact same mechanic there. You got it procced again. I also mean that in the sense that sometimes this thing procs all the time, and then sometimes it just doesn't proc forever. And it really sort of messes up your gameplay. But with Tell Me When's and stuff, we'll be able to keep a decent track of it. It's kind of annoying up there as that little flashy fading in and out icon. So, we have this ability that we get when we get our artifact weapon, which is New Moon. A 10-second cooldown. Kind of interesting. Now, I'm going to have to get rid of this and try and hide the animation, but you're probably going to see it. So you get an idea. Oh, you kind of got a glimpse of it there. What this does is it cycles through 3 different spells. Okay? And these spells, so you have New Moon. So you're starting a fresh, you're building a brand new moon. Okay, it's an instant cast spell. It does very little damage, like 7,000 arcane damage to your current target, and it changes the spell into Half Moon. Okay, so you press New Moon, so we can get rid of this stuff now. I don't need to be hiding it. You press New Moon, you see a little instant cast burn, a little like a little, you know, like a little fart, yeah, a little queef on the target, not too bad. And then it changes the spell into Half Moon. Half Moon now has a, well, it's 2 seconds, but it's reduced by haste. Doing 14,000 arcane damage to your current target, and then it changes the spell again to Full Moon. So we cast Half Moon. Whee! Looks like Star Surge. Then we get Full Moon. Full Moon, okay? When you cast Full Moon, this is the final iteration of the spell. After this, it will go back to New Moon. It does 30,000 arcane damage to your target, and it gives you a full lunar power bar, okay? Now, it has a huge cast time, like 3.74 seconds. It's enormous. It's an enormous cast time, right? Absolutely huge cast time, but it does give you a full astral power bar. So I've no doubt you are intended to use this. So a few notes that really make this spell annoying. One, with the build that most people are playing, because you'd be an idiot not to right now in the Legion Alpha, this spell makes no sense because you generate way more astral power than you'll benefit from casting for 4 seconds with this Full Moon. You have to bear in mind, right? You can't just look at Full Moon and say, oh, that's a 4-second cast, because you've also got New Moon and Half Moon to build into how long it takes you to get you this lunar power. Yeah? You understand that you have those casts to go on and when that. So it's 1 global cooldown and a 2-second cast, and then the 4-second cast on top of this. All 3 of those conditions need to be met before you actually hit this 100 lunar power. So right now it's not usable. It's something you don't use right now. And also, you can't use it with Alchemy Frenzy. In fact, you can see now, look, Alchemy Frenzy's there. Look, I can't, it doesn't work. Why that doesn't work and allow us to track that is, I think, intentional, so you can't just back-to-back a lot of Star Surges. So if you're not sure, Astral Power gives you 2 choices to spend it on. You can spend it on Star Surge, okay, which we'll talk about in a second, or you can spend it on Starfall. Okay, so there's those 2 spenders that you're going to know. So I think the idea is cast time and not working with Alchemy Frenzy, so you can't just chain a lot of Star Surges back to back. Like build a full, let's say you could build a full Astral Power Bar, chain some Star Surges into there, so you get 2, maybe generate 1 extra quickly, especially if you're building Astral Power while that's casting, which is entirely possible. And then fire off an instant cast Full Moon with Alchemy Frenzy, and then do a lot of more Star Surges back to back, so you become like the Star Surge turret kind of deal. I think that's the idea behind it, but it's, at the moment, it's not worthwhile. But it certainly will be. I've no doubt they're going to make it, so you're going to want to use this, right? You get what I'm saying there? They're going to make it so you care about this thing. So this is something we'll be keeping track of, like, regularly, and it looks very, very cool. It's actually a moon, which also means that it's not going anywhere, because the animation is very cool. It's very, very cool, and there you go, you get a full Astral Power Bar to fire off. Now, as you notice, as I fire those Star Surges, my spells have lit up. You gain empowerment now. So instead of being in like Solar or Lunar Eclipse, you gain empowerments. What you do is you get stacks of these up to 3. So you get a lunar, every Star Surge gives you a lunar empowerment and a solar empowerment. 1 stack of each, okay? So I fired 2, so I've got 2 of each. And this buffs the spells considerably. Like, really considerably. I need to put this into context. If your spells aren't empowered, your Lunar Strike and your Solar Wrath do like fuck all. They really do nothing at all. And you want to be casting empowered spells because they make so much more sense. Yeah, they're a massive priority over anything else. You want to be firing off Star Surges, getting empowerments, and firing them off. Obviously, you'll be shifting your priorities if you're AoEing and single tagging a little bit. But generally speaking, these spells are really wussy. That's like 9,000 damage. I fucking hate this when I'm trying to look at this. So it's like 9,000 damage. And this one is like 12,000 damage. They're so bad. They're so bad in their basic form. But when you empower them, so if you look at the 12,000 damage that you get from Lunar Strike, okay, let's just have a look here when we empower it. Go, go, go. Give me a Star Surge, please. There we go. Go, go, go. You see, it does this. Won't let me cast it. This happens all the time. It's so annoying. Go, go, go. Now, thank you. You see, it's now like 19,000 damage. Yeah, so it gives it like a considerable buff that does way more damage. It's very nice. So you want to be casting the empowered versions of these spells. I would almost say the empowerment system kind of forces that the base spells are really weak, and the artifact weapons actually kind of go hand in hand with that, because these are all like buffed up, like 9% extra crit chance, and there's some solar stuff down here, I believe. The damage dealt by Sunfire. Solar Wrath gets another 9% from there. And of course, as you would probably imagine, it's affected by your mastery as well, yeah? It increases the damage of Starfall and Star Surge and the effective empowerments they grant by an additional 27%. So they kind of have to make the base version super pussy because they're going to be buffed through the arse later on through the game. So that's the idea going on there. So that's how it works. You'll notice that Star Surge costs 40 and Starfall costs 60 astral power, which might lead you to scratch your head a little bit because they're kind of equal right now in Worlds of Draenor because you just use the charges on them and you pick between one of the two. This is intentional. There's a big shift in Legion towards being able to AoE. You have to commit to it. Yeah, you really have to commit to it with talents and stuff to make the synergy work correctly. And if you don't commit to like a big AoE or a single target spell, then one really suffers. And that's the idea that's going on here. So you don't have, they don't want you seemingly to have really good both ways. They don't want you to have really good single target and really good AoE. They want you to commit either way. And how that's going to play out, we'll have a discussion on that closer towards Christmas than we are right now. So that's the general idea. You'll notice that Innovate is back and Stampeding Roar is gone. Rip. You'll also notice that Dash is gone. The sads, my friends. The amount of times I have missed it. Oh my god. Boo. Boo. Yeah, really sad that it's gone. You can still shift into them, but you'll notice I can't actually do anything in these, and there's a good reason for that we'll get to shortly. So that's generally how it plays right now. So just bear in mind that little system, and let's look at the talents. As I said, I'm really happy to look at the talents for balance, because it's looking like pretty much how it's going to be. There's more, pardon the pun, balancing stuff to be done on this one. Okay, so we have Shooting Stars. Now this is where I'm talking about the synergy with AoE. So Moonfire and Sunfire by default don't generate solar power. What they've decided to do is if you take Shooting Stars, this is supposed to be the AoE talent, okay? So Moonfire and Sunfire, it doesn't change them to generate astral power. What it does is it gives them a chance to call down a falling star, dealing a little bit of pissy damage, but generating astral power. That means the more things you have dotted up, the more things this procs, which is much better than the systems we've seen where they've like put diminishing returns on things. You know, so you couldn't get loads and loads of turret procs. You'll probably remember around Throne of Thunder where Balance Druids were just fucking turreting Star Surges by multi-dotting things and with no intention of killing them, just so the dots could tick down and generate more charges. And then, of course, they nerfed it to the fucking ground. So what they've done is brought that back as a talent, but making you sacrifice single target damage in order to do it. So what they don't really want you to be doing is just dotting things up in order to get a single target bonus. They kind of don't want you to do that. What they want you to do is to be taking something like Shooting Stars in order to generate more astral power than normal in order to maintain the more expensive Starfall. Yeah? That's generally the idea they're going with here. Right now, this is the big talent that's really out of balance. There is no reason not to take this because when it starts going, it really starts going and your astral power starts shifting up. You can see how quickly it starts rising up. It's pretty crazy. It's pretty crazy. You probably just saw a targeting reticule there. Yeah. So, Starfall now has a targeting reticule. I don't mind it. I just don't see really what the benefit is. Is it better gameplay this way? Not really, no. I had a big discussion. I have a huge Skype conversation going with several of the top balance druids in the game. And they believe, the kind of topic they landed on is perhaps, Legion has mechanics very similar or akin to the Lich King going inside Frostmourne with the spirits, where Starfall's mechanic of automatically AoEing things around you without you having to sort of target or do anything else broke that kind of mechanic and made it significantly easier than it should have been. Although they have give Remorseless Winter to Death Knights, which is essentially a smaller Starfall. The problem with Starfall is it has a huge range and you can buff the range as well. So whether or not that's the intention there, I don't know. But all we're talking about right now is that yes, Starfall has a targeting reticule, you can see it there, and that Shooting Stars is the idea for if you can multi-dot a lot, the idea is that you can generate enough astral power by multi-dotting in order to keep up with the more expensive Starfall. Yeah? Very, very interesting. Warriors of Elune. I could be a little bit more specific here on my feelings. I've leveled with all these things and done dungeons with them. Warrior of Elune really surprised me because the next two Lunar Strikes have no cast time. Those are the AoE-ish spells. It's not a great AoE, but it does have some sort of splash to it. I was really surprised to find that this is on the global cooldown. For me, this is you setting up something. And, like, you set up a Star Surge to, what you would like to do with this is, like, back-to-back 2 Star Surges, giving you 2 stacks of Lunar Empowerment. And while you're firing those, activate Warrior of Elune in order to drop So you could go bam, 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 bam. That would be really interesting. But it's not. It costs a global in the middle of it. It's really awkward, and I just abandoned it straight away. I was like, a spell that's on the global giving me 2 instant casts. It's like, you know, it's just not that interesting when it works that way. It's kind of like, ugh. Kind of mucky and boring. Star-Lord! Yes, Guardians of the Galaxy. When your solar and lunar spells are empowered, their cast time is reduced by 10%. Not much to say there. That's kind of like the straight-up single target one, yeah? That's the idea they're going with there. Happens all the time. You're going to be... Obviously, when you're single targeting, you're using Star Surge over Starfall, right? I don't need to explain that to you guys. And therefore, you'll get this cast time reduction, which means you should generate more astral power, which you can put into more Star Surges, faster, blah, 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 blah. Kind of a little bit diminished by Alkin Frenzy. I mean, this thing procs pretty regularly. I know I complained about it earlier in the video, but it is pretty regular, to be fair. Level 30, survivability. And I love this, because these are survivability talents. Although they're mobility, they are survivability from a ranged DPS standpoint. So you have Renewal, which is great for leveling. Displacer Beast survives. Wild Charge needs to reevaluate its existence in some way. It makes no sense when Displacer Beast exists, as most druids will already know. So at level 45, they broke down Heart of the Wild and kind of buffed it, but also reduced it. So they broke it into this tree here that every druid gets. Okay, so you'll see this across Guardian, you'll see this on Resto, and you'll see it on Feral. Is that you can choose to give yourself like an off-spec, kind of, right? So you could choose to be more sort of a balance than a Feral druid. And what you get there is you get 50% movement speed increase. Still no dash, though. Motherfucker. But you do get Shred, Rip, Ferocious, Bite, and Swipe. You do get those, which is kind of pointless. I can't see a situation where you would want this, really. The 50% movement speed is always good. There's no doubt about that. You'd be taking it for that, but for the other stuff, not really. I would like to have seen dash and some of the mobility stuff in there, as you are a cat, to definitely do some cool stuff there, but yeah, not quite. Guardian gets 10% damage reduction. Again, something you'd be taking it for, and plus you do get to, you know, do some tanking, because you get Iron Fur, you get Frenzied Regen, you get Mangle, you get Taunt, you get Thrash, so you can do that backup tanking, which is what I used Heart of the Wild for on nearly all occasions in Wars of Draenor. And you get Resto, which is what you'd obviously take for leveling. You get your Sarah's Gift built into that, which is really nice. You guys know about that, no doubt. You also rejuve, regrowth, and Swiftmend. This really bugs me, though. It takes you out of fucking Moonkin Farm. What's the point of speccing into this shit if it's going to take you out of Moonkin Farm, right? Look at that. Swiftmend takes you out of fucking Moonkin Farm. So annoying. Regrowth takes you out of Moonkin Farm. It's like, dude, if I'm spending a talent point on this, at least leave me in my fucking farm. Jesus Christ, man. Give me a break. Level 60, some form of CC. You all know about it. Level 75, Incarnation still exists. Also, it almost feels like boring these days. 50% damage increase in 3 minutes. But it is what it is. Stellar Flare. Yeah, Stellar Flare. You remember that spell, right? You guys remember that? Yeah, it's pretty good. Stellar Flare has been reworked. It's still a third dot. Okay? It takes advantage of both things. And you'll actually see Stellar Flare benefits from both Loner and Solar empowerments, consuming one of each. That does mean that, by the way. It means one of each. So if you have both, as you can see, it does a piddly ass amount of damage, burns the target for 3,000, and then an additional 12,000 over 24 seconds. But the idea with this spell is that you actually buff it. So it's not actually that piddly when you bear in mind that you're supposed to buff it. So I'll show you now is we'll fire off a Star Surge. And then I should spec into Stellar Flare. That would be handy. Oh, the giggles in the comments. Come on. Damn it. I always make some kind of mistake like this. And everyone goes, oh, this guy's such a noob. There we go. Excellent. Okay, thank you very much. I still have my empowerments, so it still works. Hey, so I fire off Stellar Flare, and both of them disappear. Okay, but it does significantly more damage, is the idea, okay? So it's suffering 3,000 every 5 seconds. So that's how that's supposed to work. Kind of interesting. We'll have to see how that balances out, honestly, and see when the real math... Obviously, on the alpha, as you guys should know, numbers don't mean anything at this point. We're 6 months away from release. Damage is certainly not balanced in any single way. Force of Nature is back. The taunt is really good for when you're soloing and stuff. It's actually really cool. You stick that on some bosses, and the taunt lasts for absolutely ever. The problem is that they're pretty shit in terms of doing anything else right now. Well, you guys know that the feral... Wee, hello. You gonna go do something? There's the growl, you can see. Anything? Oh, there you go. There you go. Yeah, go have fun. And watch what happens when they basically disappear as the taunt runs out. So you can see that they do a little bit of damage, and then they kind of just disappear. Obviously, we want them to be casters in some form, but the taunt kind of makes that a bit iffy. I would really like, as just a suggestion, that this has some sort of interaction with our affinity. That would be interesting. That would be certainly interesting if we could get that even as a graphical touch. That would be nice. Stellar Drift. I read this and was super excited, and then I kind of reevaluated my thinking on it. So it makes Starfall a bigger radius by 30%. Pretty fucking huge, right? That's pretty enormous. Look at the size of this. Woo! Yeah, baby. You stand inside there. The damage increases the damage by 20%. Both good. Additionally, while you're inside the Starfall, you can cast while moving. Sometimes, I mean, I really worry. I can't help but think of Black Hand Mythic. I can't help but think, in a world where aspects of the Fox no longer exist, I can't help but think of Black Hand Mythic and fights where we'll be taking Stellar Drift just for the movement aspect. There'll be some occasion where that pops up, I've no doubt. But it's still nice to have the option, right? It's still nice to have the option to be able to run around in Lunar Strike and do the old chicken jive. There's nothing wrong with it. I just hope that there's no scenario where Moon Kids are kind of having to take Stellar Drift because the encounter kind of demands it and it's a single target increase. Especially when our only other choice currently is Nature's Balance. You align the power of the moon and stars to direct damage spells, re-energize your damage over time effects. I liked this in WoD, kind of, sometimes. But that was because your dots, you know, your dots used to switch. Moonfire used to chase its own fire backwards and forwards. Now you can just recast your dots, like, on a whim. It's how many globals this is actually going to save you is going to be the big math on it. But either way, it's not overly interesting in a world where you can just reapply dots anyway. And so it's not a huge deal, I suppose. I mean, it's there as a single... It's supposed to be the single target one. That's what it's supposed to be, the single target damage boost, so you dot less. So we'll have to see the math on whether that plays off. So not a big deal. But the problem is with Stellar Drift, of course, from a single target perspective, is that's like 60 astral power to do Starfall damage that's not that great compared to a Star Surge. You've got to remember, I've been trying to make the point to a lot of people, is that it's not a case of just looking at the astral power cost of Star Surge versus Starfall. It's also bearing in mind that you lose the empowerments that cause... you can't just look at like Star Surge damage and Astral and Starfall damage and try and compare them. You're also losing the empowerments, which, given they're based on your mastery and your artifacts, they're going to buff really, really heavily over the course of the expansion. So it's not as easy to just compare the two. Level 100, Collapsing Stars. This is a really dangerous one, especially under the effects of Bloodlust and stuff. What this does, instead of having your major cooldown, which still remains, thank God, see, so many big cooldowns have been removed. Oh, so nice to see Celestial Alignment's still there in some form. Increases your damage on all lunar solar spells by 30%. Be thankful to your lucky stars this spell still exists right now. If it survives, I'll be very impressed, because there are so many of spells similar to this that have just gone completely. 3-minute cooldowns? Forget about it. Forget about it. Additionally, your Lunar Strike and Solar Wrath generate 50% additional astral power. So cool. It's actually really powerful. Collapsing Stars. Initially, I thought this was super cool. You probably saw this in the artifact video when I just played Mookie for the first time. Is it changes Celestial Alignment to the spell Collapsing Stars, and it's a new dot. And basically, it's similar. It almost works similar to Shadow Priest when they go insane. It consumes your astral power over time, and the longer you keep your astral power flow up, the longer you keep the debuff on, so it continues to do a lot of damage. And it does do a lot of damage. Whether or not the math works out, because you can't cast Star Surges, right? You can't cast Star Surges while using this, because it'll just use too much of your astral power. So let me show you this. So you'll fire off the dot, and there it is. And your goal now is to keep your astral power ticking up and keep the debuff running as long as possible, right? And you'll also combine this, obviously, with a full moon. Like now, I'd start casting a full moon. Then I get another 100 astral power. And you can imagine under the effects of haste and whatnot, and Star-Lord, which has reduced cast... Oh, no, sorry, not Star-Lord. My mistake. But just with big haste procs and stuff, that you'll be able to generate more astral power to keep that buffing, or keep that up for a longer amount of time than probably intended. So they need to be careful with that. Spells like this are very difficult to balance because there are game conditions that actually alter how it plays out and might make it more beneficial. But we'll have to see. It's interesting. It's interesting, to say the least. Astral Communion, though, is not interesting. I will say my big bugbear with New Moon, although the cast time is a bugbear and the setup is a bugbear, it's kind of boring until you're setting up that big one and it has that 4-second cast which feels like an eternity, is that it always wastes some astral power. Always. You can't get to 0. You know what I mean? It ticks up. So getting to 0 is just not realistic in most scenarios. So generating 100 astral power always wastes some. Astral Communion, however, doesn't do that. 75 astral power. It's not interesting, though. Blessing of the Ancients, though, is slightly more interesting. You gain Blessing of the Ancients, so you actually get a spell, Blessing of the Ancients. Kind of like Holy Chakras. RIP. Holy Chakras. And you can choose between two buffs. You can either choose the Blessing of a Loon increasing astral power generated by Solar Wrath and Lunar Strike by 50%. Very cool for your single targeting. Or you could use the Blessing of Anshe, which gives 2 astral power every 1.87 seconds. Now, that's obviously like the AoE version of it. Yeah, where you're doing less Solar Wraths and less Lunar Strikes because you're spending so much power on Starfall and multi-dotting. Depending on how many targets you're doing, you might be throwing in more Lunar Strikes and so on and so forth. There's all sorts of things that play into this, but it's still cool. It's still cool to have this choice here. I quite like it. It could do with being maybe slightly more interesting, but I get the idea behind it, and I think it's okay because you're making choices there. You can either switch backwards and forwards. If you're rocking this and you've gone like, I'm full single target now, then you can switch on. You can swap it instantly, by the way. So you can switch to Blessing of Illume for a lot of single targets. Like, oh, I'm going to AoE now and do a lot of multi-dying. So I'll switch over and you get the lovely Eclipse animation as well. I will point out that the Lunar Strike did get a nice animation. Yeah, looks very, very cool. Well, I would love to see, like, Collapsing Stars do something like that. Collapsing Stars doesn't do anything anyway. I'd like that to be a channel spell there. Overall, there's a lot of balancing stuff to go on here. There's some tweaks to be done, which is cool. That's all right. That's a pretty good place to be right now. Some tweaking to be done. Kind of like the Warriors. It's like it needs some tweaking, but the picture is very clear of how they want to play this. Astral Power will be the big focus to try and make it so that just like there's not a mandatory cutter build, because there's lots of potential options here for different scenarios and different bosses. 2 thumbs up for me for that. Really cool. It's not quite there yet. It's not quite there yet. There's some obvious problems with it, which I've pointed out a few, but there's more. But right now, this is about as much as it's worth talking about in this version of Legion, and tomorrow it could be entirely different. But you get the idea. We'll take a quick look again at the side of Elune. There's some stuff here that we just don't know what it does yet, which is a bit of a bummer. Like, what does Scion of the Night Sky do? Something cool goes here, not yet implemented. Okay. The rest of the stuff is the usual flair we've seen across all of them, which is kind of passive buffs that you'll have to pick and choose through. But yeah, the Power of Goldrin. Casting Star Surge summons the Spirit of Goldrin, who bites the target's soul. Area trigger line nuke. Now, I believe that is the running line. He'll run from you or something like that and then do some DPS. Either way, okay. And Moon and Stars. Not the Sun and Stars, but Celestial Alignment. Each spell cast grants an additional 3% cast speed buff. The big complaints I have here are just some quality of life stuff more than anything, but it's certainly looking considerably better than Warlords of Draenor. AoE, most Mookians are always concerned about their AoE. It's not bursty, but once it gets going with the shooting stars and stuff, so I'll show you a little bit here. So let's just, I mean, this is pretty good. Yeah, Stellar, we got Stellar Drift and stuff. Once you get your dots going, okay, and you start getting this, let's say we're doing it, so we're going to throw in a Lunar Strike here, because we're doing some AoE, and then you start getting the Starfall ticking, then we start getting to see some gains, right? Because you'll see your Astral Power start filling back up. So you're starting to see exactly how this plays out. Your AoE is very, very consistent. Very, very consistent. I like it. But it takes a while to get going, but it just keeps going. It keeps going, and it keeps going. And that's cool. That's cool. I don't mind that whatsoever. It's not bursty, though. We're not going to get any detonate mushrooms or anything along those lines. That's sadly rip in pieces. It's not quite there just yet. But in terms of consistent AoE, Mookids are looking, if they stay similar to this, to be the absolute kings of that. And that's all right. That's okay. Because you don't actually sacrifice too much like some others to get there. Yeah, you can still make plenty of choices as you go down the tree. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope that inspired you. The balance is looking pretty good. Pretty good. Only some minor tweaks to be done. And all suggestions are really just quality of life stuff more than anything else. Like a global cooldown, right? This isn't that interesting. If these are the only complaints you got right now in Legion, you are looking buttery smooth, my friend. Your pubes are shaven. Alright guys, see you later. Be good.